Hi everyone, this is Tabetha from Landt Creative Space in Lakewood, Colorado. I recorded this video tutorial a few days ago and the edited version came in at just over an hour. And that's a bit long. I will have that version available. However, I thought I would just create a shorter, quick, down and dirty, fast tutorial to give you a taste of the longer one. And this might be enough for some people. So I started this painting with not much of a plan. I had a rough outline of what I wanted to do, but it was a little experimental, which most of my paintings are. I like to leave it a little open for mystery. On the canvas there we've got, it's acrylic paints, and I've got French ultramarine mixed with some white to make that misty, cloudy sky. Very loose brush strokes, lots of paint to make it blendy. And this layer will subsequently be covered up, but I was still working those clouds because you never know. You never know what's going to work and what you're going to want to keep and what you're going to want to cover up. But it's good just to get that first layer down. I had thought that the horizon was good where it was, and then I realized that I didn't like the way it was dividing up the canvas, so I brought the sky down a little bit, and I'm fading it out, you'll notice, as it goes into the distance, because color fades into the distance. So it's darker at the top and gets lighter and lighter as you go down towards the horizon. And you'll see I'm using some acrylic paints here, various brands. And I will list the colors in the description. So I had some cadmium yellow there, and it was too orangey, so I put some white to sort of tone it down, and then some light green over it. And here I'm about to go in with a different shade of blue. I'm using, I think it was called Brilliant Blue, which is very close to a phthalo blue, I believe. And I'm just making some water, painting the edges of my canvas. And when I paint the edges, whatever I do to the front edge, to the front of the canvas, I like to do to the sides so that it looks like the painting is wrapping around. There I'm going in with some white to highlight the water a little bit. Now the sky part of this painting has dried, so I'm going in with another layer. That's the way I like to work. I start at the top of a painting and work my way down, and then I go right back up to the top and work my way down again. So you'll notice there that it looks like there's some nice little clouds, unintentional clouds in the distance. This is what's so nice about blending on the canvas instead of on your palette, is that you get a lot of nice unintentional brush strokes that just occur, and they're not completely unintentional, but they're not really obvious clouds. And there you'll see it looked like I was scratching my paintbrush. But I was talking about how if you soak your paintbrush in a container of water, that it's going to sort of chew up the wood and loosen the glue, so that's not a good thing to do. I usually soak mine in like an inch of water just while I'm painting, so it stays wet, because it is very dry here in Colorado. And then I wash them right after. So there I sketched in some cliff shapes, and I did it in a light blue. In case I didn't like the shapes that I did, I could just sort of erase them by brushing them back into the sky and starting over. But I got them to where I like them, and so I'm going to block out those shapes with a burnt sienna. And you'll notice I'm using very choppy brush strokes, very horizontal and vertical and hard edges, because I'm painting cliffs. They're very rocky, not very rounded. So I'm painting right over that blue outline because I don't want it outlined. And I switched to a smaller brush to get those little nooks and crannies. And I started adding some black into the burnt sienna. And that is creating some nice shadows on those rocks. I'm not worrying at this point about how the cliff is meeting the ground, because there's going to be trees in front of those cliffs. And at this point, when you're blocking them in, if the shape is not working for you, the shape that you sketched out, this is where you can adjust it and make those changes. And I like to work intuitively. I don't like to left brain it too much. So if it feels right to change the shape, I change the shape. Going back in with some more shadows. And I didn't like the shape of that little part of the rock, so I'm sort of adjusting that. And here you'll notice that the angle of the easel has changed a bit and the light has changed, and that's because my battery ran out that evening, so I charged it and came back the next day to finish the painting. I'm going in with some Sap Green there, and I was deepening that green with some one of the dark blues. It was either Ultramarine or Brilliant Blue, can't remember which one. And some black. Now I took the fan brush, and this is a great tool. I like the bristly fan brushes, not the thin nylon ones, but the really beefy ones. And I just dip them straight into the paint and dab them onto the canvas. So the brush is twisted vertically, and I'm just dabbing up and down, dab, dab, dab. No brush strokes in this. And it ends up looking really bristly. It's great for these evergreen trees. I wasn't crazy about the shoreline. I thought it was a little dull being just straight across like that. So at this point I'm going in and making it a little bit more jagged. And I wasn't sure if I was going to like this, but you got to take chances in art, because otherwise, where are you going to take chances? It's the easiest place you can take a chance is with a painting. And I went over some of that yellow with some green. Here I'm going back in with more highlights on the water. Now for me, painting water and painting sky is all about layers. It's just about going back and forth with a lot of paint until I get something that I like. Sometimes people will get one layer on there and decide they don't like it and give up. But you got to keep moving. Layers are good. They add richness and depth to a painting. And here you'll see me, I'm adding some shade to the water. So I'm imagining that the light is coming from between those two cliffs, and there's a shadow on the water that's blocking the sun. So I went in with some of that brilliant blue and black to create the shade in the water. And you'll notice I'm keeping with horizontal brush strokes, and that's because I want my water to be fairly still. If you start doing some brush strokes that swoop up, that will make for some more rocky water. Now I went in with a filbert brush, and that's like the flat brush, but it's got the curved edges on it. And it's great for making round things, more natural things. Those flat square brushes are great for man-made objects or even those cliffs, but the filbert is good for natural objects. So I went in and I'm just dabbing some little foliage in there and some grasses, getting some highlights because it got pretty dark in there. So it looks like I mixed the green with a bit of yellow and sometimes a bit of white. Now I'm taking a round brush and I'm just adding little tiny details to those distant trees. Just making them a little bit more tree-like, adding tiny little bits to them. And really it's just, I'm just dotting a few dots here and there with that round brush. And I definitely recommend you do this with a smaller brush unless you are fairly skilled with a round brush, because it's very easy to accidentally make a big mark when you didn't mean to. Now at this point, I realized that I had gotten too specific and too, I guess, trying for realism with those bushes and grasses, and I don't really appreciate that much in a painting. I mean, I appreciate the talent. I think it looks pretty, but it's not that interesting to me. So for my painting, I wanted to shake it up a little bit and make it a little bit sloppier, for lack of a better word, a little more impressionistic. And here I'm getting some dark shadows on the trees and bringing those trunks down a little bit. And I have to say that the video cut out before the very end, and I did put some land in the foreground. And I don't think it shows me doing this in this video, but I really like that. So look at the still picture and see if that's something you might want. And if you're following along with this tutorial or any other video, or even using a photograph or someone else's painting as an inspiration, at some point, let it go and do your own thing. Don't feel like you have to follow exactly. If you're an absolute beginner, it's good to follow exactly just so you get the feel of what's happening and learn the skills. But strike out on your own and be creative. So there I'm adding more highlights. I added some gray into the water, and now it looks like I'm adding some white. I went back to work on the sky some more. Now at this point, the sky, all the clouds are sort of forming in between those two rocks and going out almost in a V shape. And I thought that was not very interesting. So I kind of changed it up. You'll see here in a minute. But you might like the cloud formation like that, and that is completely up to you. That's your artistic decision. So yeah, there's where I changed it up and having the cloud formation start behind that right cliff. And once again, changing the shape of the cliffs as I go. Sometimes it happens accidentally. You have to change it because you accidentally slopped the paint over. Sometimes it's a happy accident. So here I am putting some final touches on the painting, working on that sky, deepening the blue and adding some more clouds, and just working in layers. There I put some burnt sienna with some white, a lot of white in there to add some color and interest to the sky. In hindsight, I think it would have been nice to put some fuchsia or even purple in there and have it reflected in the water. I think that would have been lovely, but I didn't. So there I'm putting some distant clouds in with a smaller brush and going back in, blending some blue sky to make it look nice and soft and blendy. And there I'm putting some more of those choppy clouds, which is really just all about putting dots and dashes right across that sky. And here is the final painting. I'm happy with the way it turned out. You'll notice I did put some land in the foreground, and I did that with black and then some burnt sienna mixed with probably a little bit of white, and I think it turned out quite nicely. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Happy painting!